How's it going, everybody? I hope you're having a good day, and I hope you're staying warm. I've been thinking quite a bit lately and talking a lot with others about the idea of being of service. Specifically, how do we assist those who come to us looking for advice or help of some kind, especially within the context of their own emotional recovery or spiritual healing? Where do we draw the line on our own involvement? When does help turn into enabling? When does our desire to assist turn into our own need to fix, save, or rescue the person that's come to us? In order to really help them in an effective way, one of the things that's necessary is to be able to maintain good, healthy boundaries. And that's not something that comes easy to those of us who grew up in alcoholic or otherwise dysfunctional homes, where there was all sorts of turbulence, emotional, physical, maybe even codependence or counterdependence, a whole mess of things that we had to deal with. Along the way, we also had to learn how to read the terrain, how to pick up on the states that the people around us were in, to read them emotionally. But because we lacked the experience or the emotional intelligence, those things that we felt, we often assumed them to be our own, the anger, the shame, the guilt, the fear, whatever it was. And when you combine those two things, heightened emotional sensitivity and the inability to establish healthy boundaries, it leads to difficulties not only in our own healing, but especially in the work we might be called to do with others. So when I was a kid, I don't know, maybe I was 5 years old or so, we didn't have a car. My father gave it up because of his PTSD and his nervousness behind the wheel, and my mother never learned to drive. On Saturday mornings, more often than not, she and I would hop on a bus and go to Scranton and bum around for the day, do some shopping, get some lunch. And one time we were there was this little kid, probably not much older than I was, and he was in a wheelchair. And it was obvious that his legs didn't fully develop. And I said to my mom, "Mommy, why is that boy in a wheelchair?" I was crying. Something about it just hit me very deeply. And she said, "Oh, honey, there's something wrong with his legs. That's why he's in a wheelchair." But that wasn't my question. It hit me on such a deep level. I was wounded by the fact that any kid had to be in a wheelchair, and that's something my mom could never answer. Who could? As I got a little older and went to school, I was a kid that I got to not be friends with, but he and I were close. We hung out on the playground and talked. And his clothes were always dirty, and sometimes his hair was too. And I came home crying, and I said to my mother, "Can't we just bring him home to live with us for a couple of days? Teach him how to wash his clothes, how to wash his hair, make sure he has enough to eat." I wanted to rescue this kid from his environment. I was hit with these things very deeply as I continued on through my life. And one way I learned how to cope was becoming a hard ass, becoming selfish. When I got into my 20s, I was very arrogant. I didn't have a good opinion of myself, so I lifted myself up by belittling others, by treating them like shit, with very few exceptions. And I had this cousin who was older than me that I really looked up to as an older brother, and one day he pulled me aside. He looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And rather than taking it for what it was worth, I just looked at him and I said, "Hey man, I'm a kid. I'm just having fun. I'm having a good time." And I'll never forget it. He didn't yell. He didn't say anything. Just shook his head, threw up his hands, said, "Okay." And he got up, he turned his back on me, and he went out and cut the grass. And he left me sitting alone in his living room. And I just chalked it up to the fact that he didn't get me, but he'd come around. A few years later, I was just about 30. I was living with a woman and our relationship had been turbulent for a while. And she broke it off. And before she left, she told me she was leaving specifically so that I could grow up. Those two events, my cousin walking away from me after calling me on my shit, my then girlfriend walking out, they were the beginning of my journey into recovery, into healing. It was a long, dark path. It was hard. After she left, I was running around quite a bit, drinking pretty heavily. But I was no longer taken care of. I ended up having to get 2 jobs just to keep a roof over my head. And I began to learn a little bit of the responsibility that I never had to learn before, or chose not to. Eventually, I moved away from everything because I knew it was the only way things were going to change. And I ended up in New Jersey on my own in a shitty little apartment where for 6 or 7 years I did some really, really deep soul searching. I won't say everything changed, but I will say I took the first few steps that were necessary. Those almost 30 years ago to get me to where I am today. And I know that none of that would be possible if my cousin and my ex-girlfriend hadn't left me to fend for myself. If someone comes to me looking for advice, of course I'll give it to them, happily. Offer them advice or assistance if they ask. Whether or not they follow it is entirely up to them. Any efforts to proactively fix, save, or rescue them from their current situation would only be an attempt on my part to turn them into the person that I believe they should be. In that situation, one side becomes the sheep, the other side becomes the wolf. And where's the healing in that? It's one thing to get down into the hole with someone and help them while they climb out as best they can. That's really true compassion. Going as deeply into someone's work with them as they will for themselves. No matter what it looks like, no matter how long it takes. In that way, by their actions or inactions, they're showing us what they're ready for. And that way, we won't overestimate their abilities. We also won't undercut those abilities either. It's another thing entirely to try to yank someone out of a hole when all they're really looking for is someone to jump into that hole and stay there with them. That only exhausts us, enables their sickness, and removes any possibility of them finding the gift, finding the healing that they could only find through their efforts to climb out. It requires a lot from those of us who are asked to help. On this side of the boundary, we need to really, really be aware of where our efforts are coming from. And on that side of the boundary, We need to be able to let people struggle sometimes, especially if they take our help but don't work with it. We have to really, really let them walk into their own darkness, stumble, so that they can find the strength to get back to their feet, walk forward. Till next time.